Hi everyone, I want to thank you for joining me today for another show of Life Goes On. My name is Carrie, and Life Goes On is sponsored by Elder Circle in Grand Rapids and CSEP, the Senior Community Service Employment Program, which helps those 55 and older find meaningful training and employment opportunities. Today I have with me retired Sergeant Hugh Quinn, and he will be talking about the veterans benefits. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So I have actually had the pleasure of drilling with you as I was in the National Guard for 6.5 years.
Yep.
And you were a recruiter at the time. I was a corporal, and I think we had about a year together, if I remember correctly, over in Duluth. So
that sounds about right.
That much I know about you. Could you give our audience a little bit of a background of your military career before we move in?
Sure. So when you and I met, I was at the tail end of 29 years of service total. So it started with 3 years in the Army right out of high school, standard enlistment, Benning, Bragg, and Hood, Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, and Fort Hood. When I came home and went to college, I joined the Guard, and I spent 9 years in the Guard right here in Hibbing with what was Alpha Company then. Somewhere along the way, the opportunity came for me to come back to active duty service in what's called the AGR force, or the Active Guard Reserves. And then I spent another 17, almost 18 years doing that. So all told, it was about 29 years that I served.
Okay, so the Active Guard, that is actually a daily, like your regular work, kind of like Active Army, except you're on the Guard side, just to kind of clarify things for those of our listeners who don't know what that is. Regular Guard is just the once a month drill.
That's right.
So,
That's
okay.
Right. The Active Guard folks are typically the ones that'll run the units. We're there Monday through Sunday, whatever the governor needs us to do. Same pay, entitlements, benefits, all the same as being in the active duty military. It's just that we're paid by the state of Minnesota as opposed to the big Army.
Okay, okay. So you just recently retired.
I did. Well, yeah.
3 years ago, roughly.
Yes. Yep.
So still pretty new.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So how are you adjusting to civilian life?
It's interesting. It took about 1.5 years to finally separate and try to find some footing in the civilian world. I still miss the camaraderie. I miss the brotherhood. I miss my guys. I miss the folks that you serve with. There's a commitment there that you just don't find in the civilian world. But it's going well. I mean, I'm fortunate in that I came out of the active duty military and landed right in this job. I mean, so the transition was short, and now I get to work with people that I know just by virtue of all those years in the service.
And the best thing is you get to do whatever you want with your hair. I'm going to point that out. You had longer hair a month and a half ago when I saw you last,
right.
Which was kind of your, what's the word I'm looking for?
Rebellious?
Rebellious, exactly, from having to cut your hair for 29 years straight, which can get really, really old. I know that because I cut my hair as soon as I got out of the military, and I dyed it too. So
sure, yeah,
that was the rebellious stage.
Yeah, I don't know what prompted it. I really don't. It was just I've never had long hair, and so I thought I'd give it a go. And then my daughter got married right before Christmas, and she asked me to put the uniform on to give her away. So I wouldn't disrespect the uniform like that. Yeah. So I cleaned up and high and tidied it, and away we go. So
now you're going the other direction, and you're growing out a beard.
I am.
That must feel nice too, not shaving every day.
Well, not shaving every day, and it's actually warmer.
It is warmer. See, females don't have that luxury at all.
I think that's probably a good thing.
Maybe so. There are issues, but we won't go into that some women have facial hair, but that's a hormonal thing that.
Let's get back on track.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, okay, moving into your position.
Yes.
Okay, so you said that you were able to move into it almost immediately from retiring from the Guards.
I did, yep.
Okay, so how's the last 3 years being the Veteran Service Officer?
I would tell you I have the best job in the county. I really enjoy what I do. As with any job, there's some trying days, but I think on the whole, it's exceptionally rewarding. There are days and some privileges and some honors that I get when I work with veterans that most of the civilized world or civilian world won't ever see or know about. So, yeah, it's, I'm a patriotic person, and so to be able to continue to serve the veterans means a lot to me.
Yeah.
I liken it to having a massive platoon, and I get to be the platoon sergeant, sometimes the company commander, but
So you get to play all kinds of roles in one, and I think I'm glad that I stopped at the sergeant level. That was a good level to quit at, but yeah, that's a lot of paperwork to do for you on your end. Just to inform, you're with the Itasca County.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
But like I said, you do help others outside of your county.
Oh, sure, sure.
How does that relationship look when you're working with others that aren't in your county? Because does most counties have a VA office?
Most counties have a county, well, by law, every county is required to have a county
Okay.
veteran service officer, and that's in state statute. I think what's different for me up here is, like I said, I spent 9 years in the unit here in Hibbing. My time in Grand Rapids, most of that time, the headquarters was in Duluth. And so what ended up happening when I moved into the veterans position in my county is that I had a lot of relationships, pre-existing relationships with people that I either went to Iraq with or served with here, served with from Duluth. And it's a natural tendency. They're comfortable with me for them to come to me. So, you know, there's no boundaries. There's no set boundaries. If you're not comfortable with the county veteran service officer you're working with, you need to find one that you are comfortable with. So.
Okay, so it's okay for a person to move
Sure.
their desire to work with a different county
Sure.
because they're more comfortable to work with that particular officer in that county.
That's right.
Okay, that's good to know, because some programs, you know, that are state and stuff like that, you know, you can't step outside the bounds of your county. So it is okay to be able to move around, and just that's good to make people feel comfortable. So
Sure.
how about the process? Tell me a little bit about the process of coming in, and what that whole umbrella looks like when you're first starting.
Okay, good question. I think probably the most important thing to do, especially for the guys that are just coming home, just getting out of active duty service, just get into a veteran service office. Don't have any stress about what you have to do, how you're supposed to do it. Just go in there and find somebody to talk to and say, hey, I'm right back off of active duty, 2 years off of active duty, 3 years off of active duty. Get in and talk to a veteran service officer so they can. There's some enrollment things that need to happen for new vets when they come back. Older veterans, Vietnam era veterans, you know, that there have been so many changes over the years to the presumptive conditions to Agent Orange exposure that a lot of the veterans slip through the cracks. And so where they've had claims in the past that were denied by the VA, they really need to make sure that they're on top of everything now, today. And there's, you know, understandably so, there's a lot of reluctance and a lot of hesitation on their part. They didn't get the best treatment when they got home, so we're still digging those guys out. You know, if you're uncertain, just come into a vet's office. The first thing you'll do in my office is schedule a visit. We try to run appointment only out to 10 days, but if somebody were to stop into my office and they had driven, you know, 90 miles to get there, clearly we'll sit down and talk to them. But we like to run it at that 7 to 10 day mark, no further than that. So
Okay.
generally we can get you in 10 days.
Okay, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
How does a person get the vet status? What makes them a vet?
Okay, good question. So there's some confusion on that, and unfortunately at the federal level they're still trying to get this figured out. Title 38 Uniform Services Code is what we live by in my world. 180 days of active duty service generally is what makes a person a vet. Where it gets confusing for National Guardsmen is it has to be 180 days of Title 10 duty that is not initial active duty for training. So the Guard fellows who enlist go to basic training in AIT, they might be there for 6 months, they might be there for 10 months, depending upon the job they choose. Regrettably, that time does not count towards what the federal law says is veteran time.
So it is their drill weekends that count, and their 2 weeks. Is that what it is? Their 2 weeks here, or what would it count as?
Again, so to separate full-time in the Guard, whether you're a 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a summer person, or the AGR job, it's basically who's paying you. And so when you go away to basic training in AIT as a Guardsman, now you're being paid by the federal government to learn your MOS or your job skill, whatever that is. But that time is called initial active duty for training time. That's not active duty time by the regulation, and therefore it doesn't count towards that 180 days, nor do your drill weekends or your 2 weeks. Now, if you're activated, now you're back working for the president under Title 10 orders, and that time does count. So, any questions, just call. You know, it's a little bit disheartening because there are so many Guardsmen that enlist. Heck, I was a recruiter, and after 9/11 and after the war started to pick up, there were a lot of Guardsmen who were enlisting in the Guard that wanted to be able to go. They were, once everybody gets there, it's not as sexy as they realize. But there were a lot of folks that really wanted to do their part and wanted to do it through the Guard. And regrettably, A lot of them haven't had that opportunity. So,
Right, right.
but we just encourage everyone to call and check.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who are just joining our show, I have Hugh Quinn with me today. He's from the Itasca Veterans Office, and we're talking about the importance of benefits. So moving on to that part, what is so important about, as you were talking, just call, make an appointment, even if you've been home for a couple of years, it's important to do that. So why is it important? Why is it important to get benefits?
So if I go back to the two things that I said earlier, for those guys that are just getting back, under the regulation, a young soldier who's just returned from deployment or within 5 years of discharge is automatically enrolled in VA services, but he's got to do the paperwork. And once you're enrolled, then you're on the VA's medical system. Then you're using that. The VA they could be your primary health care provider under the ACA or the Affordable Care Act. As most of us know, if you don't have health insurance now, you can be fined at the end of the year. So the VA can provide that to these young soldiers. Once you get enrolled in that system, it's very easy for veterans to say there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. It's a nag. It's an ache. It's I'll gut it out. But what happens is 20 years later, when they're getting their knees replaced because they did 60 jumps with the 82nd, there's no way to track and put that back to the military and say, this is a VA issue and you need to be taken care of because it is an obligation of the country to take care of your needs. But it's really hard to put that together if there's not what we call continuity of symptoms. It's easiest if the VA has treated you for it for all those years. It's fairly simple to come back and put what we call a claim in for compensation for disability. Works out quite well. So they all kind of build on themselves. And then with the Vietnam veterans, a lot of those fellas, their tendency is to believe that they're okay, they don't need the benefit, and that's good. It's admirable. I've had a lot of conversations in my office with veterans who've done well financially. They've worked hard, maybe they've been in the mines their whole life, they've got a nice nest egg, mama and he are doing great. But what they don't realize is that if you die of an Agent Orange presumptive condition and you are married, your spouse is entitled to benefits, to include, probably more important than anything, medical insurance for the rest of her life plus a stipend. So where the veteran himself might say, I've done well, I've taken care of myself, we're going to be okay. My thing is always, but what happens if you get prostate cancer, which is one of the more common ones? What happens if you get lung cancer, which is another one of the more common ones? Diabetes. Some of those Agent Orange presumptive conditions are pretty pervasive, and we never want to have a case where a veteran passes away and hasn't applied for benefits. In my office, we just finished going through every single deceased Vietnam veteran's files, and it took about 8 months to complete them all, but we did find a number of cases where the spouses were eligible for benefits. In one case, the spouse got a check, a back pay check for almost, it's $260,000.
Oh, wow.
And while that seems righteous, in the end, that's a lot of years that she missed those benefits that she struggled and probably could have used them. So.
Right.
Vietnam veterans, get in. I don't care if you're mad at the VA anymore. Come in and see me. We'll get it straight.
Okay. So we were talking more of the medical and kind of not necessarily life insurance, but something similar to that, as you were saying with the pension. But
sure.
What other benefits is available for those that come into the VA?
So the two basic things that we apply for from the federal side are either going to be health insurance or a disability. But the state of Minnesota is very generous to its veterans. The Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs has their own programs that they run under the State Soldiers Assistance Program. And so there's some money there to fund what we would call a special needs grant. For example, if a person is classified as a veteran under Title 38, the special needs program can spend up to about $5,000 on things like a new furnace, siding, those things that people generally, they just wear out and they don't have a way to pay for them. And they're justified by need. So it's not as though you could come in with $60,000 in the bank and assets of, disposable money
and
say, I want you to buy the furnace. There's not an income standard per se, but there has to be a genuine need.
Right.
So, and then the other one would be their medical and dental program, which is an income-based program, but for all veterans, they can actually I said medical, it's dental and optical, excuse me. But there's money there for dental and optical treatment annually as well, provided they meet the income guidelines. And the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, as far as states go, really does a great job taking care of the veterans in the state. So.
I have heard that Minnesota is very, very good with our veterans. So lucky for me and you.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. If a person comes in and makes an appointment, we'll use me for an example just because I am going through this process, and it makes it really easy to give this an example because I don't mind confidential-wise being able to say this. So in basic training, I developed severe tendonitis to the point of having 3 doctors saying it's chronic, you're going to have it the rest of your life. And basically having the military say, you can't deploy, we cannot have you any longer in the Army, so we need to have you resign, basically. It's so medical discharge. I came to you not that long ago. So from there on, kind of describe the process that I'm going through so people can get an idea that if they come in, they know that they want to file a claim, whether it's for a medical reason like me or because they have reached that full VA standard. So you can use me, but I came in, what was the process like? What did we do?
And that's an excellent, I appreciate you opening up and sharing your case because you bring up an excellent point which contradicts a little bit what I said earlier about traditional Guard soldiers, because as we go through this process, if you're hurt as a National Guardsman, the first thing is hopefully the company, the area you were serving, prepared what they call a line of duty investigation and found the military to be liable. If it's a basic training issue, there's typically going to be medical records that will show profiles, sick call slips, sick call visits. From there, it's a matter of establishing, there's 3 basic components to a VA claim, and this is the way it's described by law. You have an in-service occurrence, meaning something happened in the military. You have a current disability, some disabling condition, and then there's what we call the nexus, what connects them. But really, outside of those 3 basic components, there's another one that really gets in the way for a lot of veterans, and that's what they call continuity of symptomology, or continuity of symptoms. So in a veteran's case such as yours, your injury stayed with you through your military career. I'm fairly optimistic now that we've vetted that out with all the appropriate documentation from doctors that shows, it started in basic, it stuck with you, and in the end, it precluded you from serving because you weren't able to complete what you were supposed to for your profile, what they call your Polhees profile in your job. And that's it's a great example to bring up. To go back on what I said earlier, if you're a Guardsman and a traditional Guardsman who's been hurt on National Guard duty, that can qualify you for veteran services. So you just, again, another great example, just get to the Veteran Service Office.
Yeah. And if anybody that's younger watching this and they're thinking about going into the military, if you get hurt, go to sick call, because I did not. It's tendonitis. It's fairly hard to actually prove that, whatever it was. My thought in my mind was, it hurts. I know I'm overusing it. I have enough knowledge to know that much. I have a month and a half left to go, and it's going to probably go away within 2 months. Problem was, it never did.
Right.
So, but obviously, if you fall, break something major, you're going to end up in sick call anyways. But something like my case with tendonitis, that's very hard to prove. Encourage anybody to make sure that they go to the sick call and get it checked out, because that's one thing I did not do. I was rather highly stubborn.
Yeah, and so another good point of that, in the combat arms fields, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to any others, but as you make it up to the senior NCO levels in the combat arms field, there is no way, even in the Guard, that you didn't get that far along with some chronic injuries. The hard part about the Guard is that once you own up to that, then you end up going through the process of whether or not you're retainable, and treatment for it can be tough. If you're on the active duty side of the house, you just go to, at Fort Hood, I would just go to Darnell Army Hospital and they would treat me for it. And if they couldn't fix it eventually, it would become a problem. Where Guardsmen get burned on that and where it becomes a struggle for them is that they don't want to disclose it because they want to maintain their membership.
Right,
such
because
as you.
it's...
I mean, I've got guys that have retired out of the Guard that knees replaced, hips replaced. You're talking combat armed soldiers with 2 and 3 deployments, and there's civilian documentation, fortunately, to back that up, but people don't want to complain about it to their higher-ups in the Guard. It can be an impediment to them. So.
Yeah, most for sure. So.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting kind of close to the end of the show. Is there anything else that you can brief us in on that you feel is an important topic? Okay, what about schooling? That's one thought I had.
Sure.
Okay, so for the younger vets that are coming in, I have so much schooling benefits from when I signed on, loan reimbursement especially, kind of a thing. How does that work if they're not coming in for necessarily medical reasons to do a claim? Can you do a claim so that it's not from, like my case, where we're kind of going for disability in my case?
Yep.
How would that process look for them when they're trying to come in and want to establish their school benefits?
So it's another great question, and we just recently had a case that will highlight what the situation for that is. So here again, the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs has school liaison VA reps on the Iron Range here. They've got a rep in Duluth. They've got a rep. Generally, we'll refer vets to them. 2 weeks ago, I had a young veteran come in. He was ETS'd out of the Army in October, just this last October. 2 deployments, hard-charging young man, working at Walmart, chasing carts, because it was the first thing he could get his hands on to go to work. When he came in to see me, his intention is to go into the electrician's program here in Hibbing.
Okay.
He had some initial conversations with the school. There was a missed contact somewhere in there, to no one's fault. That just he just kept driving on. That's what young soldiers do. When he came to see me, I called the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs rep here in Itasca or in Hibbing Community College. This young man was eligible for post 9/11 GI Bill, which, as you know, pays basic allowance for housing at the zip code rate, plus pays for all of his tuition. Well, initially when he checked with Hibbing, they said the electrician program is a cohort program, basically, meaning next fall you'll be able to start and run the program through.
Yes.
The piece that was missed was that he could have started doing some preparatory courses for that, and actually done better for himself and his young girlfriend financially with his post 9/11 GI Bill. Fortunately, like I said, the MDVA folks are really, really good. We were 2 days from the start of classes, and the fellow here in town got it done for him. So now he's in school. Go to school, use your benefits.
Yeah, benefits are huge, the school ones.
Regardless of what you get told when you're in the military, when you get out, you're still going to need some kind of accreditation, certification, education if you want to pursue a career in the civilian world. It's very rare that a person will come out of the military and their skill set will apply directly to whatever career field they want to work in and get them that job. They have to have an accreditation, whether it's 90 days of VOTEC, truck driving school, anything like that. So get in school, you earn the benefits, use them.
Yep, and the nice thing is that your basic training transfers over, I think, to a handful of credits at least.
Right. FIAD and first aid typically is what you'd see.
Yep. So, because I know I see that on my transcripts that it says the basic training on there, that's transferred over to that. So, next question I have along those lines is older vets. So when I joined, I know what my school benefits were, what they were offering. What about older vets? This show, Life Goes On, helps those 55 older across the Itasca County, St. Louis, Kuching, all those areas. So if we have an older vet who wants to find ways to better his life, to move out of Walmart, to be able to go to school, what kind of benefits might there be school-wise for someone like that who way back, in the 70s or whatever it may be, didn't have that when he originally signed on?
So if his time has expired or her time has expired to use their GI Bill benefits, there isn't a heck of a lot we can do. However, if a veteran has a by law 20% with exceptions down to 10% disability, we can get them enrolled in vocational rehabilitation with the VA, and the VA can then help them to choose a career that will suit them better. So voc rehab would probably be the thing that we would steer most of those folks to. Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain voc rehab just a little bit?
I'm not a master in it. So voc rehab is something where they actually will sit down with a counselor who will look at whatever the disability is that the veteran has and discuss potential career choices that disability is suited for, that they would be able to actually succeed in that career. And then whatever the cost is, the VA generally will pick up a pretty good portion, if not all of it. So.
Okay, so if they have an actual disability, the VA will actually pick up. Is it the portion of the rehab bill or a portion of the schooling?
So no, it's the schooling
It's the
itself.
schooling.
Yeah, we've actually had veterans get their entire toolkit paid for, and then the heavy equipment school as well. So yeah, they'll pay for it.
Okay, very good to know, because like I said, I know what my school benefits are. I know what I qualify for. But for someone like an older vet,
Sure.
so this gives them, encouragement to be able to go out, look at their situation, and be able to know I actually have a choice, because most vets know whether or not they have a disability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of coming in to their officer, starting a claim. Once that claim goes through, especially with disability, then they can move on to the rehab.
Right.
And then look at the VA being able to pay a portion to almost
Right.
all of their schooling.
Right. The vocational rehabilitation program. Right.
Okay, perfect. Sounds wonderful. So any other last tips or blurbs you'd like to add on to it?
Just get in. If you have any questions, call or come into the offices. Just stop and make a visit.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming today. It's been a
Thanks for
pleasure. Definitely enlightening on my side. I don't know hardly anything about the VA in itself. I'm just working through the process with you right now. So it's being able to really have a wide scope of understanding, especially what the VA can do for those that are 55 and older and are really looking for a benefit and a leg up in life. So I would just want to thank you for coming again.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Right.
Hope we do some good.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So thank you for watching Life Goes On. This is once again sponsored by Elder Circle in Grand Rapids and CSEP. CSEP isn't currently taking enrollments. However, Itasca County is full. Also, I want to encourage our vets to apply for CSEP. If you are lower income, have a disability, our vets are our main concern when it comes to CSEP, along with spouses. So please contact me. We'll see what we can do for you, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.